The sixth era, 1995 to 2022, could be called the Grace Era. But really, every era could be called that. Famous hymn writer Isaac Watts wrote, "Time like an ever-rolling stream bears all its sons away. They fly forgotten as a dream dies at the opening day." In 1967, in The Atlantic, Arthur Schlesinger Jr., modern historian, wrote, "The world has altered more in the last century than it had in the 1,000 years preceding, and the increase in velocity of history means, among other things, that the present becomes the past more swiftly than ever before." For most of human history, you could only go as far as you could walk in a day. Now you can cross the globe in half a day. For most of human history, you only had current information on your family or village, with occasional news from a far-off place. Now you have immediate, constant news from everywhere and little news from your village and your family, if you're still friends with them on Facebook. The 1990s were when internet usage became widespread. Amazon started just selling books in 1994. Netflix started in 97. Google started in 98. In the spring of 99, the News Pilot, local newspaper, ceased to exist as a separate newspaper. MySpace started in 2003, Facebook 2004, YouTube 2005, Twitter 2006, Instagram 2010, Blockbuster closed in 2014. Trinity has been in existence for just over a century, but it feels like 2 centuries have been concentrated and stuffed into the last 2 decades. We receive, as observers, the earlier eras of our history. We're participants in these latter ones. We had a vote. We joined, or we left. We sinned and were sinned against. We forgave and have been forgiven. The joys of the last era were our joys. The wounds, our wounds. It is tempting to imagine a kind of hagiography, like the heroic stories and old pictures of the saints we really didn't know. But they believed the same theology that we believe, the theology of the Bible, that Christians, leaders and pastors not accepted, are sinners by nature, and they're saints by grace. Simul justus et peccator, simultaneously and profoundly broken and beloved. 5 pastors occupied the pastor's study during this era: Peterson, Sy, Interims Gormley, and Christensen and Hoff, not related to the first church planter Hoff. 3 main statements captivated our attention: Trinity, a healing and caring community; growing in grace, blessing with grace; and welcome home. We experienced some tension and comings and goings. Edwards and Andrews retired. Hoffman went to plant the church in Hawaii. Christensen and Anderson went on to lead Lutheran renewal. In this era, the pastor's leave-taking was more abrupt and more painful. We struggled. Early on, Trinity had ethnic identity struggle. Were we Norwegian, Norwegian American, or American? In this era, our identity questions were more doctrinal. Who are we? Were we Lutheran or general evangelical? Or were we charismatic Pentecostal? Or maybe some kind of hybrid? Depended who you asked. When I came to Trinity in 2005, John Walmark was the president of the congregation. It was his 3rd year as president, and I was the 3rd pastor he worked with in those 3 years. Time, like an ever-rolling stream, seemed to be picking up speed. Hold on. The era began by looking back, as Trinity celebrated her 75th anniversary in 1996. Let the flame burn brighter. Pastors Hoffman, Christensen, and Anderson, representing 40 years between 1956 and 1995, all returned, along with many others. The senior pastor at that time, Kurt Peterson, with an active committee, put out a big welcome mat, and it was a marvelous homecoming. Kurt Peterson's beautiful vision was that Trinity would be a healing and caring community. Holistic healing of the whole person was possible, and many people received strengthening, counseling, personal ministry, equipping, and deep calls out to deep healing. Bob Mabry writes, Peter and Sandy Chernus and Tara and I met every Monday night for a year to pray together, and it was in the midst of our prayer times that the Lord started speaking to us about planting a church. We began looking into Lutheran cell churches as models. Pastor Kurt Peterson suggested we plant in San Pedro, and so San Pedro Fellowship was born. Our tagline was SPF for your soul, and San Pedro Fellowship, coming to a home near you. San Pedro Fellowship involved many folks and welcomed many San Pedro folks. It ran from 1998 to 2002. During that time, 1999 to 2000, the Raise the Roof campaign addressed beautifying, modernizing, and unifying the Trinity Sanctuary. Many participated, gave, prayed. Stu Johnson administered the project, and Dave Palacios was the master builder. After Pastor Kurt Peterson finished up in 2001, local pastor Justice Gormley was a well-loved interim. His joyful leadership was a balm for a painful season. Pastor Bill Sy, who had earlier completed his pastoral internship at Trinity, returned to serve from 2001 to 2003 as a gifted communicator of God's truth, love. Pastor Larry Christensen returned as an interim pastor in 2004 and 5. He told me he and Nordis had planned to come and love the people of Trinity and, quote, catch up on some television. When he left, he said, we didn't watch any television. Christensen was captivated by intercession and reminding us of our identity. Pastor helped us recall who we were, who we are. He said Trinity is like a pier with dual pylons driven deep into the ocean floor. One pylon is the Reformation confession centered in the grace of Jesus Christ. The second pylon is the renewing presence and power of the Holy Spirit. Trinity is no longer Trinity if either of those pylons are removed. I received and accepted the call to serve Trinity in October of 2005, installed on Reformation Day. 2 years later, Trinity built the parsonage on 602 South Weymouth. The Light on Broadway campaign acquired Trinity East, which is ministry usage space and rental income, which has put us on a more solid financial footing, allowing us to open up space eventually for interns. We closed Trinity Lutheran School on graduation day 2008. God was gracious to give us unity, the school board, elders, council, and nearly all the pioneers. TLS had served God's purposes for 35 years and had finished its course. New ministries and ministers were recognized and mobilized. Shelley Michelson retired in December of 2016 after 18 years of faithful service. She put the ministration in administration. Also, these videos would be impossible without her masterful archive and historical acumen. Patrick Choi helped remove the old rugged and termite-damaged wooden cross and replaced it with the Abiding Cross project in 2012. God Rocks Kids Choir started in 2009 with 24 kids who performed fishtails along with the Puppets, another longtime ministry at Trinity. God Rocks continues to this day as singing, dancing, and dramatic outreach that involves our own Trinity kids and many from the community in 2 musicals a year and other opportunities to sing God's praise. Another effective local outreach that has included many is Surf Camp, started and operated by the Davises. Meet at church, pray, load up the surfboards, drive to the beach, and teach some Barneys how to pop up in some 6 sets. That's me trying to speak surfer. The Crossing Ministry, which began as a partnership between YWAM and Trinity, was eventually embraced by many Christians and churches in San Pedro. When it closed, Ed Kais and team dared to dream about a food pantry collection and distribution center here at Trinity that has given many people here a purposeful ministry and has fed many people daily bread every week. Kira Blackstead joined us in January of 2018 as our first Trintern. So far, a total of 15 Trinterns have completed a year of internship. 6 more are joining us in the upcoming year. 1 seminarian, Matt, just graduated and was ordained after receiving a call to Christ Lutheran in Valencia. 3 other seminarians are right behind him, and who knows how many more. The Theta community is starting our 4th year of intentional community-based discipleship. Theta members commit to a rule of life and a rhythm of prayer for a year, which also involves learning together, serving together, eating together, praying together, and playing together. 2017, Trinity, in a lavish act of generosity, raised over $60,000 in a week, with more later, for Courage House Tanzania to purchase, with cash, a beautiful campus at the base of Mount Kilimanjaro that now houses over 32 girls and their babies rescued from trafficking. That ministry and campus is expanding, growing, thriving. After this, I told Trinity, God has taken note. You preferred girls you've never met in Tanzania over your own comforts and improvements. Not long after, we found out that Carol Peterson had left her family's substantial estate to Trinity. This generous legacy gift not only has allowed us to address many years of deferred maintenance and to improve the facility for the vital mission God has called us to today, it has also allowed us to be ridiculously generous locally and globally. We've given well over $100,000 in the last few years, beyond our normal benevolence, to over 82 mission grants, near and far. One of those grants, It's Elementary, is led by Julia Anderson and includes many ways of loving our neighbors at 7th Street School and now also at Willenberg. Principal recently said, when the teachers or the PTA says we need help, we immediately think of Trinity. Since 2018, Trinity has been the primary investor in helping plant a Baptist church in northern Thailand and 3 Lutheran churches in Tanzania, an evangelical church in Albania, and 2 in Turkey. 2020 and 2021. COVID, Zoom, worship in parking lots and driveways and patios and courtyards, and literally on Broadway. Campus renewal now is touching nearly every corner of this facility. I'm falling in love with the word facility. A building, grounds, structure is meant to facilitate mission. That has begun, and there are fantastic plans for more. Ultimately, the story of Trinity is not the story of human heroes or sinners, our successes or failures. It's the story of God, localized, particularized in our neighborhood. This God has graciously factored into His glorious story our highs and lows, our sin and success, our fear and courage, our missteps and gutsy leaps. He has taken our little and made it plenty. He has taken our sin and made us holy. Like in the book of Acts, chapter 2, He's taken our parochial, to ourselves, behind closed doors tendencies, and He's baptized us with His Holy Spirit. He's moved us out into the city, boldly proclaiming the great works of God. Also from Isaac Watts, O God, our help in ages past, our hope for years to come, our shelter from the stormy blast, and our eternal home. For the Lord is good. His steadfast love endures forever, and His faithfulness to all generations.